Kazakhstan seems like one of those countries that almost no one can properly explain, and maybe that is exactly why it is so fascinating. We are talking about a territory larger than the entire Mediterranean, with lakes that seem impossible, canyons that look like CDI mountains over 7,000 meters high, cities built to mark a new era, and scars left by some of the greatest Soviet experiments in history. But here is the detail. Kazakhstan is not strange because it is far away. It seems strange because it mixes within the same country. Continental scale, nomadic memory, almost alien landscapes, and deep marks of power, survival, and isolation. In less than a few minutes, you will understand why this place is not just a country in Central Asia, but a kind of living map where nature, history, and culture seem to have been stacked in layers. And in the end, perhaps you will realize that Kazakhstan is not unknown because it is small or irrelevant, but because it is too large to fit into the simple image
From
the world
above,
has created.
Kazakhstan reveals its layered story. Rivers etch paths through ancient mountains, deserts guard timeless secrets, and cities rise as testaments to human endeavor.
With 2,724,900 square kilometers, an area larger than the entire Mediterranean. This means that crossing the country is not a simple trip. It is almost like crossing a silent continent. And this absurd scale explains why Astana feels isolated, why nomads shape the culture, and why the next surprise begins precisely in the landscape. Kazakhstan's geography seems to have been assembled with pieces from different countries. In the same territory, there are dry deserts, mountains over 7,000 meters high, endless steppes, and even forests that completely break the image of a flat and empty place. For a foreigner, this creates a strange feeling. You think you have understood the country by looking at one landscape, but the next region disproves everything. And it is exactly this mixture that prepares one of the most unlikely natural curiosities there. Lake Bokash is one of those curiosities that make Kazakhstan seem like another planet. It is a single lake, but it works almost like two separate worlds. One part has fresh water, while the other is salty, divided by a kind of natural barrier. It is not just a geographical oddity. It is a reminder of how this country holds phenomena that seem small on the map, but challenge the logic of those who arrive expecting ordinary landscapes. And the next lake takes this feeling to an even more surreal level. Lake Kandy looks like a scene created for cinema, but it was born from a real disaster. In 1911, an earthquake caused a landslide that blocked the valley. The water rose, and an entire forest was submerged. To this day, the dry trunks appear rising from the surface, like the masts of a ghost ship. The most impressive part is that the water stays below 6 degrees Celsius, preserving branches for more than 100 years. And when you think nature has already gone too far, a canyon appears that seems to have been carved for another world. Charyn Canyon is one of those places that make Kazakhstan leave the category of unknown country and enter the category of how is this not more famous, called the Grand Canyon of Central Asia. It is about 90 kilometers long, with walls that reach 300 meters and formations that are 12 million years old. It is no coincidence that it has been used in science fiction films. But the most curious thing is that, inside it, there is a section that seems to hide the ruins of a lost civilization. Inside Charyn Canyon, there is a section that completely changes the feeling of the place, the Valley of Castles. The rocks there do not seem like just natural erosion. They look like towers, walls, and ruins of an ancient civilization abandoned in the middle of nowhere. It is the kind of landscape that makes a tourist slow down, because the brain tries to find architecture where there is only time, wind, and stone. And this visual confusion is only the beginning, because farther ahead the scenery stops looking ancient and starts looking lunar. Moon Canyon, also called the Lunar Canyon, seems like a direct answer to anyone who thinks Kazakhstan is only steppe and emptiness. Its multicolored rocks create a scene so strange that the photos look like CGI, as if someone had exaggerated the editing. But it is not a filter, it is exposed geology, layers of time transformed into landscape. For the visitor, the feeling is uncomfortable and fascinating at the same time. And in the desert, this strangeness takes on an even more inexplicable form. Torish Valley seems like a geological prank in the middle of the desert. Hundreds of stone spheres, many, almost perfectly round, appear scattered across the ground as if someone had left giant balls abandoned there. Scientists discuss natural explanations for their formation, but the visual impact remains too strange to seem ordinary. In Kazakhstan, even the desert seems to hold unanswered questions. And after these stones, the country rises to an even more monumental scale. The Tian Shan Mountains carry a name that already sounds exaggerated, Heavenly Mountains. But in Kazakhstan, that name makes sense. If they were not classified as part of the Himalayan system, they would be the second largest mountain range in the world. Kantengri Peak reaches 7,010 meters, creating a natural border that commands respect even from those who only see it in images. It is a landscape that explains the nomadic soul of the country. But the next layer is not in nature. It is in recent history. Kazakhstan did not leave the Soviet Union like someone closing a door in a hurry. It was the last country to declare independence. In 1991, days after the USSR itself had officially ceased to exist. This shows how its modern identity was born in a delicate transition between Russian legacies, nomadic memory, and national ambition. That is why Astana is not just a planned capital. It is an attempt to write a new chapter. But some old chapters left enormous scars. The Aral Sea is where Kazakhstan's greatness meets one of its deepest wounds. It was once the fourth largest lake in the world, until the Soviet regime diverted its rivers for cotton irrigation. The result was a massive environmental disaster. Today, only about 10% of the original volume remains, and rusted ships were left stranded in the middle of the desert. It is an almost impossible image to forget, and it also reveals how this country carried another silent weight from the Soviet era. For decades, Kazakhstan was also used as a territory of military power. More than 450 Soviet nuclear tests were carried out on Kazakh soil, leaving deep marks on the land and in the memory of many communities. After independence, in 1991, the country made a rare decision. It voluntarily gave up its entire nuclear arsenal, one of the largest in history. It is a gesture that changes the way you look at its politics. But there are older secrets, made not of radiation, but of wood. The Charyn Mosque seems to carry a story within its very structure. Built in 1886, it was made entirely of wood, without a single nail, by a Chinese architect who is said to have fled to Kazakhstan. According to legend, when he returned to China, he was murdered for revealing architectural secrets. True or not, the narrative fits a country where cultural borders have always crossed, and this mixture becomes even clearer when the country's own name comes into play. The name Kazakhstan already reveals a key to understanding the country, land of the free nomads. It is not just a beautiful translation, it is almost a declaration of origin. Before modern borders, planned cities, and political maps, this territory was shaped by peoples who moved with the herds, the seasons, and survival. This heritage explains the relationship with open space, with horses, and with freedom, and perhaps nothing translates this better than a tradition practiced with eagles. Eagle hunting is one of Kazakhstan's most striking traditions, not because it seems exotic, but because it reveals an ancient relationship with nature. For more than 4,000 years, hunters have trained golden eagles for years, creating a bond that goes beyond technique. For many, the relationship between human and bird is sacred, almost an extension of nomadic life in the mountains and steppes. And if this tradition shows control and patience, the next one shows strength, speed, and competition. Cockburr shows a side of Kazakhstan that does not fit into peaceful postcards. It is a national sport played on horseback, in which players compete for the body of a goat, in an intense physical game deeply connected to steppe culture. Considered one of the oldest national sports still active, it reveals how skill, courage, and mastery of the horse remain symbols of identity. And after this almost ritual strength comes something that seems simple, but carries a sacred meaning. Kumis is one of those curiosities that seem strange to outsiders, but make perfect sense within nomadic logic. Made from fermented mare's milk, it is seen as a sacred and medicinal drink, linked to resilience, hospitality, and life on the steppes. In Almaty, it is still possible to find it in markets such as the Green Bazaar. For a tourist, it may be just an unusual drink. For the country, it is liquid memory, and this memory does not belong to a single people. Kazakhstan has more than 131 ethnic groups living together in the same territory, and this did not happen by chance. The mixture comes from centuries of migration, Mongol conquests, and Soviet deportations that displaced entire peoples to this region. That is why the country is not a simple identity, but an overlap of memories, languages, and customs. For those who visit, this appears in the food, the faces, the neighborhoods, and even the way people speak. And this diversity also hides an unexpectedly familiar origin. The Almaty region holds an origin that almost no one associates with Kazakhstan, the apple. The city's old name Almaty means father of apples in Kazakh, because this region is considered one of the natural birthplaces of the fruit. It is curious to think that something so common in markets around the world has roots linked to mountains, forests, and ancient roots of Central Asia. And when the country seems to become more familiar because of this, it surprises again with a much more strategic resource. Kazakhstan does not draw attention only because of its landscapes. It also occupies a strategic position in the world. The country is the largest uranium producer on the planet, responsible for more than 40% of global production. This completely changes the way you look at a territory that many treat as peripheral. Behind the steppes and deserts, there is an important piece of the world's nuclear energy. And, curiously, after this geopolitical weight, the country reveals an almost cinematic, icy setting. The Medvedev skating rink seems like an unlikely setting even for those who have already understood Kazakhstan's scale. Located at 1,691 meters above sea level, it is considered the highest in the world and sits in a gorge surrounded by snowy mountains. It is not just a sports space. It is a demonstration of how the country turns altitude, cold, and landscape into identity. And if this rink seems made for humans to challenge the ice, The surrounding mountains hide an almost invisible animal. Kazakhstan is also home to one of the largest populations of snow leopards in the world, but almost no one sees this animal up close. It lives in mountainous, cold, and hard-to-reach areas, as if it were an invisible part of the landscape itself. For the country, this presence reinforces a curious idea. Not everything that matters is in urban centers or tourist routes. Sometimes the most powerful symbol is hidden high in the mountains, and the final mystery descends underground. In the desert near the Caspian Sea, Kazakhstan holds one last almost secret image. Underground mosques, hundreds of years old, carved directly into the rock. They show that spirituality there also learned to live with isolation, heat, stone, and silence. After deserts, impossible lakes, nuclear tests, nomads, and heavenly mountains. These mosques close the video with a powerful idea. Perhaps Kazakhstan is not unknown because it lacks history, but because its history has remained too hidden. In the end, Kazakhstan is not just a distant country on the map. It is a place where deserts, mountains, impossible lakes, nomadic traditions, and Soviet marks coexist in the same territory. Perhaps it seems so unknown not because it is irrelevant, but because it is too large, complex, and surprising to fit into a simple image. And that is the great lesson. Some places only reveal their true strength when we look beyond the postcard. If you enjoyed this journey through Kazakhstan, subscribe to the channel and comment which country you want to see in the next video.